Riverside.
I want to welcome you to the Trigger Warning Talk podcast. We are sponsored by Anchor. We are produced by Penton Pending Consulting Solutions, LLC. And we are going to have a great podcast interview today. I have a very special guest. I want to be introducing her in a second. But, of course, we got to take care of business. So, first and foremost, I want to let everybody know that with these conversations, they're uncensored conversations. These are adults talking to adults, so it's real talk. We say what it is what we say. And, you might hear some curse words here and there, but hey, that's just part of the game. We have information. We don't do therapy on this podcast, and we also have a ton of resources. So if you are triggered at any point during this discussion, because everything we talk about is under the umbrella of public and mental health. We talk about domestic violence. We're going to be talking about that today. We talk about sexually based offenses. We're going to be talking about that today. We talk about missing persons. Every show we do, at the end of the show, we cover a missing persons case. 99% of those cases are melanated men, women, and children. Today's missing person case is going to be about a young man named ALONZO Brooks. Got a ton of information about his case from different sources, and I'll provide all that information. And we also talk about human and sex trafficking. We're not going to get into that today. However, 3 of the 4 topics that we cover, we're going to be dealing with today in this podcast. So if you're triggered at any point, call 911. That's your first resource. It starts the documentation process. It gets all the people that you need involved immediately. If you don't have an immediate need, that's fine. We have a bunch of resource information listed in the show notes for every show. This will be audio and video streamed everywhere. We're now streaming all across all platforms. I got a few more that I just found that I'm going to be adding the Trigger Warning Talk podcast to. And so we have the assault, we have the trafficking websites and phone numbers. We also have, for those that are having substance abuse issues, whether it be alcohol or drugs, we have Al-Anon for the supporters. We have Alcoholics Anonymous. We have Narcotics Anonymous. If you are suicidal at any point, whether it's you, somebody you know, somebody you don't know, there's a new 911 number for suicidal issues. It's 988. Again, 988, which, by the way, September happens to be National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. So we will be dealing with some of that stuff throughout this month. We had an episode that aired on Thursday where our guest, Trevon Moment, he talked about suicidal ideation. And again, this is a very important topic that we want to make sure that people that need help have the help. That being said, I want to welcome a very special friend of mine. Her name is KeKe Boyd. KeKe Boyd is a Texas native. She's from Central Time Zone, like I am from, which that threw me off today. That's a whole nother conversation. KeKe, don't start laughing because you're going to throw me off, and Mrs. LP going to hear that, and she's going to start laughing and come in here. So I'm trying to stay focused. So KeKe is a Texas native who is a multi-abuse champion of domestic violence and sexual abuse. We're going to be talking about those things, and these are some very important discussions that we're going to have. She's a dramatic arts graduate, an actor, a singer. She's currently a psych major, so she's going to be doing some great things as a psychologist. She's going to be talking about her journey through domestic violence and sexual-based offenses that she's dealt with, and how she's a champion, why that's important. What does that mean? Because everybody has a different definition of what they call themselves. We're going to talk about those things. She's a wife, a mother of 1 son, and a worship leader at her local church. I could go on and on and on, but I'm not. I want to turn the mic over to my friend, Miss KeKe Boyd. She runs a couple of rooms, and we're going to talk about that later in our shameless plug section with my friend, Mary Kim Farkas, who I interviewed, which was a great interview. If you haven't seen that, you got to check Mary Kim out. But I'm going to turn the mic over to KeKe Boyd. KeKe, what's going on?
What's going on, LP? How's it
KeKe,
going?
you know, you are someone who is doing some amazing things, not only in Clubhouse with our friend Mary Kim, but also with so many projects that I'm thinking of that I want you to be part of for the stuff that I'm doing. And a good reason for that is you have this calmness and this aura about yourself in spite of everything that you've gone through, in spite of all the domestic violence and the sexual traumas and all of those things. And we're going to talk about that right now because I want people to understand we don't just do dialogue on this podcast. Again, there's no therapy done on here. We don't do that. We have dialogue with solution based action plans that we put in place because we want people to know that you're not alone. There's tons and tons and tons of help. There's so many different forms of help, traditional Western forms of mental health therapy. You have the metaphysical forms of mental health therapy, whether it's Reiki or NLP or EFT, just so many different things that are available for those that are dealing with these unfortunate traumas. I want to start with you. Tell us about who KeKe is and how KeKe began this journey.
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Let's see what we cover. But first, I'm a child of God, and even when people ask, "How are you doing it all?" or "How are you resilient in climbing higher heights and new mountains?" And I credit that oftentimes to God because I know that without God, nothing is impossible. I am a woman of faith, and I have to really, really stand firm in saying that I'm a child of God first. And I was raised in Dallas, Texas, a little bit more closer, Oak Cliff, that's my hood. So, being there, I'm also a father. I mean, I'm also a daughter to a late pastor, raised in the church. So church girl, as well as people would call it when I was in school. But oftentimes people do not even realize and did not, as I became older, probably in my early 20s, what even think would be a part of my testimony today. And a little bit about myself: I am a daughter of my late father, which is a pastor, raised in the church, oftentimes would be called the church girl. So, really proper prim, but still, kind of a poor upbringing once my father passed away. So oftentimes, even being in the church, there was just no discussion of relationships aside from marriage. No one, at that time really just told us or talked to us about the ins and outs of, premarital sex, about even just sexuality in general. So it was, again, well, one of those things that I was just learning as life happened, I would say. And so, as I got older, and for whatever reason in high school, I prided myself in being disciplined and seeing all the red signs and seeing that, guys at the time, my mindset was guys just want to have sex. So I had it locked and key. Whenever that was even brought up, I would pull away. But I think I was like in my senior year, and I got into a relationship that turned my life around in such a way that I just thought would never would have happened to me. And really healing from that relationship and other, relationships that were a part of the, DV and other abuse, that's something that did not know today I would be calling myself a champion on. The healing happened, and it's really that avenue of how or an outlet of how I'm pouring into others.
I want to ask you a question about champion, because we had a conversation in the pre-interview about that. And I like for people to define what term works for them when they're talking about themselves. Most people use survivor. Some people don't like that. They use champion. Some people don't like that. They use overcomer. Some people don't like that. They use victorious or victor. Some people don't like that. They use triumphant. Some people don't like that. I heard one lady say, and she actually called herself victim, and she laid it out. She broke it down and explained why that works for her. So I always want to find out from everybody, why do you choose a particular definition and what does that mean to you? But we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
As a preacher's kid, which that's what we kind of call people who parents are in the ministry. You said that your mom removed you and your family from that situation. How did that work?
So this was probably the first time I even experienced abuse in a way where I couldn't fully define it, but I knew that my body felt alarmed. I knew that I was in shock. I knew it was something that I did not want, and it paralyzed me in such a way where I didn't know anything else to do but to tell my mother. And it was one of those things where I was being gaslit and manipulated in feeling like if I were to tell an adult, then I would get in trouble for it. So that was the first toxic pattern or tactic that my abuser at that time used. And so in all nervousness, I went to my mother and I told her, the situation that happened. And at that time, I did not feel like she came to my rescue because she was in shock. She didn't really have a huge reaction. But all that I fully remember is that at that time, she did not come to my rescue. And so it really hurt because I did not even realize that that was something that also stemmed in the realm of the abandonment emotionally that I was already feeling, because I have a differently able brother that's a year or two younger than me, and I have a sister that's about 11 years older than me. And so I already felt like most of that attention was going to him. And so at the time, like I stated, I didn't feel like she came to my rescue. But I do recall and remember that maybe sometime later, we were removed from that neighborhood, the situation, switched schools, all that. And that was, her way of coming to the rescue. But at the time, there was nothing that she said directly to me. And it really made me realize how important it is to communicate certain things with your children, to make sure that they know that you have their back, that they know that you have their support, that they know that the best of your ability, you will protect them the best way that you can. And so with that, it left an emotional scar and a wedge between my mother and I ever since. So we often clashed because of that. We clashed, and I don't think that I even brought it up to her after that. I don't think we revisited that conversation until probably I was in my mid to late 20s. And so it's one of those things where even from that was the what I did not realize. It started, the door of abuse, embracing that abuse, showing, even though I knew I was kind at my core, I was afraid to even be nice because I felt like if I was nice, someone would again take advantage of me or take it for granted. And so for a while, I was dealing with anger issues, abandonment issues, resentment, and it really just continued to grow. I, projected that abuse on my family members. I was mean. I was, harmful, all because what I didn't realize at the time is that I was trying to carry a weight that was too heavy for a child to carry. But, not realizing that my mother had a different weight to carry, being a new single mom of 3, but, not being emotionally available for my sister and I. And so that caused me to open doors to toxic relationships after high school, because I was so I showed so much pride and I was so confident in school because I wouldn't entertain a guy that would bring up sex. I thought I was running the show because I had, all these dudes that were attracted to me, but when I would date them and they brought up sex, then I would bow out. So I'm like, nope, red flag, nope. But little did I know that was immaturity at the time as well, because I opened the door to someone that had a completely different approach. They weren't about, at least that's not what they were pursuing in me. They were older, and that was something that I saw different that caused me to be attracted to that. Like all the other ones, it was easy for me to, cut off those relationships and pull back and be on to the next. But this particular person was the complete opposite. And I started opening myself up to being intrigued because at the time, that person came off as a mystery to me, which I was used to getting attention from, guys in a different way. And it was actually kind of fueling me in such a way because I wasn't used to getting that kind of attention at home. But I started at a young age working on my own confidence. So whenever that would come up, sex would come up, I would cut them off. But fast forwarding to the relationship that really got me to the point of calling myself a champion was, the relationship that was different. And this relationship was different until I lost my virginity at 19 years old, got pregnant at 20, and while I was pregnant, that's when the abuse started. It started with, the verbal abuse. It started with the name calling and things that I just was not used to. I was not used to, but it was the apologies for some odd reason that was causing me to think, okay, it'll get better. This is just young high school stuff, but it'll get,
I call it.
yeah. Yeah, we were thinking that it was that. I mean, I thought it was that, and I'm like, you know what? It'll get better. I kind of knew his background because that's what we would do. We would talk a lot. So it was the first relationship where the conversations were also stimulating, and I saw, a vulnerable side of this, of this person that he was not sharing with anyone else. So to me, I'm like, wow, this is love, even though I knew that he had these anger issues. And then the anger issues turned into control, and then the control turned into verbal abuse, and then the verbal abuse after, I had my child turned into physical abuse. And it was one of those things that truly I thought I would never be in, but I told God that if he delivered me from it, I would champion on the other side of it. I will do the work, whatever is necessary to make sure that I'm a good example for not only my son, but to others that look up to me or will look up to me one day. So it was kind of like I still had that mindset of growth, but I was still dealing with the immaturity, being in my first DV relationship, dealing with the shame of telling somebody about it, protecting my abuser. So I had to heal from all of that. And today, I can even call myself a victor and an overcomer and a warrior, but I do call myself a champion because being a champion is a discipline that takes work. You have to really, really be in a form of a mindset of positive shift, of change, of transformation, and that starts with the mind, and then it flows down, and then that's when you have to do the work internally, and then that's when it shows outwardly. So that is why I call myself a champion, because I didn't just wake up and give someone a baton and tell them, you get to tell me how I live my life, you get to tell me that you're allowing me to survive. I'm like, no, I'm taking back my power, and I'm saying that I have championed this because yes, I was in this valley, I was in this this tribulation, and I did allow you to have that power over me for a season. But I'm also resilient enough to know that that God will bring me out of it, that he will give me the strength, that he will allow me to be an overcomer by the words of my testimony. So with that, I'm like, that sounds like a champion to me. So that's where that word came from.
This is the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, sponsored by Anchor, produced by Pen Consulting Solutions. We are streaming everywhere that you get your favorite podcasts, like Spotify, like Anchor, and Amazon Music, and Google and Apple Podcasts, and Podbean, and Audible. We have a YouTube channel that you can watch this particular interview when it airs. It's called Penton Consulting Solutions, LLC. And we want to let the audience know, if you are triggered at any point during this podcast interview, please call 911 for an immediate need. That will bring EMS, fire, police if you have an immediate need. If you don't, we'll have a bunch of resources listed in the show notes, like the trafficking, domestic violence, sexual assault hotlines and websites available. We have for those that are dealing with substance abuse issues, alcohol or drugs. We have Al-Anon for the supporters. We have Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you are suicidal, know someone who's suicidal, or seeing somebody who's doing a suicidal ideation attempt, call 988. Again, 988. That number is available nationwide here in the States as of July 16, 2022. We're talking with KeKe Boyd, multi-abuse champion, psychology student. KeKe, I want to get a timeline real quick before we get into the real meat and potatoes of what we're talking about here, which is domestic violence, or DV, sexual violence, or I always say sexually based offenses. And I want to ask you a question about that too. So please keep me on track, because my ADD kicks in sometimes and I kind of go in the left field, and I can hear Mrs. LP saying, now, hey, you're in left field or whatever. And that's her way of bringing me back to the middle. Please don't stall. See, I got to talk to you offline, because I'm telling you, she has radar for stuff like this. And she'll come in the room and just start cracking up or whatever. And I'm trying to keep her at bay, because she really wants to laugh right now, because she's still laughing about this time zone thing. But again, that's a whole nother conversation. Okay. So I'm glad that you answered the question about champions and what that means to you, and you define all of that. The timeline question that I have is, your abuse started at what age? I got a number of questions.
Yeah, it started probably around 9
Okay.
years old. Mm-hmm.
What age were you when you notified mom?
Yeah, so I notified my mother at 9. So
Okay.
when it first started, I was just shocked. It was almost a paralyzing feeling because I've never experienced something that felt so dirty, so bad, and trying to wrap my mind around why would this person violate me in this way and with no kind of remorse. And so when it happened the first couple of times, then that's when my abuser at the time was really convincing me that if I was to tell my mother, then I would get in trouble. So then I started dealing with, okay, well, maybe I would get in trouble. But I'm like, no, this just does not feel right. So let me tell my mother. And so I finally told my mother, and that was probably around 9 years old.
From the start of the abuse to you notifying your mom, how much time are we talking about passed?
It was, I probably cannot pinpoint like around the time that it passed, but I knew that it was short lived because maybe around the second time I had already decided in my mind that if she did it again, I would tell. So that was probably within maybe a couple of months of it going on.
So we're not talking a long period of time, not 6 months, not a year, not years or anything like that, just a couple of months.
Yes, it was a few months. Yeah.
And then um, you said that basically you were asexual after that until age of 18. And then you started dating, but you were still kind of putting the guys off. The guys that you encountered that wanted to be intimate with you sexually, did any of them ever ask you what's going on? Like, is there something that I'm doing? Is this something that I said? Is it something that I can help you with or work with? Like, what were some of those conversations like, just briefly?
Well, I don't even know if that was something that they even had in mind of like, are you okay? Like,
You just
is there
ghosted them. You was like, hey, I'm gone. That's it. I'm out.
Well, I mean, kind of yes and no. We all went to high school together, but I mean, yeah, it was ghosting, at the definition because the minute that was brought up, it was some kind of reason or excuse I would use to back out of the relationship to the point where it was like a running joke. It like where people were asking, was it okay to date a certain guy because they're like, I'm pretty sure KeKe has already dated and dumped him. And
Dated,
so already dated and dumped him
dated and
is
dumb. I gotta write that down. Hold on.
I know. It's something that, I'm like definitely still kind of embarrassed about, but I know that it stemmed from a place of trauma that I was not even aware of at the time. And so one guy, I think it really hit me when this guy was really, really into me. And I did not know that he brought me all of these gifts. And I think he did bring up sex probably. And at the time, now thinking back, I'm like, I could have just told him I just wasn't ready or, something. But it was at the time like, oh, that's a sign. We're not supposed to be together, not knowing that that's a natural thing that all humans will experience. You will have sexual drives, but you do still have the liberty to say, I'm not ready for that. And so I would not say that I was ready. I would just bow out of the relationship. So this last one, I wrote him a letter. Breaking up with him, not knowing that he was coming to school that day with all of these gifts. And yeah, I was trying to hurry up and get rid of it. And so he snatched it out of my hands and ran off because he just thought it was, some cute letter that I was trying to pull back on giving him. And so he read the letter and his heart was broken. And the crazy part about it is after high school, maybe when we were in our early 20s, I reunited with him, and he told me that I was his first heartbreak, and he had to deal with that emotional trauma that stemmed from me. And so it was devastating to hear that, because it also reminded me of the deposits that I made in other people's lives of trauma because of the unhealed trauma that I had gone through.
I want to jump to, I call it the meat and potatoes section of the podcast, where things kind of come to a head.
Okay.
When we talked in the pre-interview, you said that you're dating this guy, you have your son, and this guy starts doing all these domestic violence things, verbal abuse, putting you down verbally, all of these things. Are you guys living under the same roof?
So we were not at the time. I was at my own apartment, but he would be over often. And so, most times when my child or our child was there, everything was fine. And I oftentimes would have my mom to come over and spend the night and whatnot. And she was a great help at that time when our child was a lot younger. But yeah, it was one of those things where I think the straw for me, because this was probably after a while of habitual habitual situations where the toxicity was getting even greater. But at that time, there was never a time that I was struck in front of my child.
Okay.
And I think that was the excuse that I kept giving myself, where I was like, okay, if I get struck in front of my child, then I'm leaving. And I don't know why that rationale was where I was at the time, but I'm like, you know what? If this person will strike me in front of my child, then he really does not care. And so it was very, very late at night, very, very late at night. And I don't even know what the argument was about, because most of the times I was really trying to walk on eggshells and do all the right things so it would not trigger him, which again, that's another sign that you're in an abusive situation, when you're trying to walk on eggshells, trying to play nice, you're protecting them, you're isolating yourself away from loved ones, friends. So all that was happening, but my mother, still, I really needed her. So she was probably the only person that I did not shut out at the time. And so late at night, got into it about something, don't even recall what it was at the time. And he started really striking me. And then all of a sudden, trigger warning here, he grabbed a belt and he started beating me with this belt. And at the time I felt helpless. I was just covering myself, because I just could not, again, believe that I was caught up in a situation like this, to the point where now I'm thinking, like, if I keep allowing this to happen, or if I keep shutting this out, or if I keep hiding this, will I end up 6 feet under? Will I end up in the hospital? Will I live to even be able to raise my child and my future children if I continue to allow this to happen? And so, as he was striking me, I don't know how this happened, but my son, he was one years old at the time. He woke up out of his sleep. He opened the door, walked in, and saw this happening, and he ran up to him and bit the back of his leg. And so he like turned, and like he kind of like shoved him. He didn't give him like a really hard shove, but he like shoved him enough where he fell back. And so I don't know if any of our listeners know about, the mama's supernatural
I'm a bear.
strength, mama
Yep.
bear's
I'm a
supernatural
bear.
strength that happens
Mhm.
when it comes to protecting her children is something that's real, because I got all of the strength that I had left. And long story short, with that, he was running outside of the house. And so with that, like, it was it was baffling. It was baffling. It was very, very scary, because my mother was downstairs, and she stated that she heard commotion, but she didn't know that we were in a situation like that until he ran out. And so I think that kind of that had scorned me in a way too, because it went back to a trigger of me feeling like my mom yet again didn't rescue me. And so it was something that I really had to, again, do the work. I had to really do the inner work, the inner child work, the shadow work, um, all of that, because I was messed up. I was the type that really, really looked good on the outside and made sure that I kept up, appearances on the outside, but was really, really just broken on the inside. And so at that point, again, I didn't realize that I was being this mean person. It was coming out in a different way. I didn't trust anybody, always had a guard up, was ready to, fight someone if they were trying to, if it even came off as if they were trying to take advantage of me. They saw a whole different side of me. So, it's one of those things that I'm thankful for. I'm grateful for today, because now this is why I have such a calm demeanor, but paradoxical at the same time, because I have this creative side where doing dramatic arts, bringing that back to the equation. Dramatic arts that my mother allowed me to do is really something that is still today a healing wellspring for me. So when you see me smiling and talking about positivity and dancing and doing things of affirmations, or the things that I post on social media, that's all me. That is all me. That no highlight reels. It's all me, and it's a healing wellspring for me, where I'm healing while I'm helping to heal others. So, a blessing that all things work together.
KeKe, I gotta. I'm striving not to go into my one question with 27 parts mode, because Mrs. LP hates when I do that. So I'm not going to do that. And I'm like, I'm following the notes that I've taken to the letter. So I'm just saying, I want to give Mrs. LP a great shout out, because she watches these and listens to them. So thank you, Mrs. LP, for helping keep your husband on track. I'm not going to do the 27 parts, because I almost did it. So I want to jump to the next thing, which is, seriously, this is important. You were jailed for 2 days after fighting back. What the entire fuck? Please tell us about that, because I just don't understand. Here you are being physically abused with a belt by this guy. He assaults your son. You turn into mama bear, thankfully so, rightfully so. You know, he did a bitch ass move, and I'm just gonna say it, for putting his hands on you multiple times. He runs out because you're fighting back, and you get jailed for 2 days. How? Why?
So this actually was not even with the first abuser. This was with the second abuser, and he came in a totally different package. He
Oh,
looked
this is somebody
different.
else.
Yes,
Oh, this is somebody. Okay.
Yes, he looked different. He was well polished. He was in leadership. So on paper, he looked like almost the perfect guy. You know, I had spiritual parents, so we would sit down and he would converse with them. So very, very charming guy. They had a way with words, I will say. And so I realized, you know, a part of that was a gift that he had to even get to the heights that he's gotten, because he does have a great mouthpiece. But the other side of it was the things that he was dealing with on the inside that I was just completely caught off guard on. And so the same things started to gradually happen without the physical harm. So I didn't even know that people could psychologically abuse you, and I didn't even know what that even looked like. And so the gradual things that was happening, even that I started paying attention to from the previous relationship, was isolation. Isolating from people that he knows that I care about, especially as soon as they see different signs that are concerning. He started to have a very short fuse that was surprising and shocking, because again, like on the outside, and most times he would be, again, this outgoing, kind, very personable kind of person. But when he was upset, it was a totally different him. He would mistreat me, but he would shower me with these extravagant gifts. And so I would almost excuse the psychological abuse, because I'm like, I was so blindsided about these big extravagant gifts that he was getting. And so one night, when it came to this particular person, he accused me of cheating on him. And I'm like, how would I even have time to do that when I'm only 3 places? And so what I did not know is he was trying to provoke. He was trying to provoke this anger in me that he had just never seen, but he knew how to keep like poking the bear. So that's when he started calling me names. And I mean, the ugliest names that I have never even been called. So calling me names, like saying very, very nasty things to me to provoke this anger in me. So when he finally provoked this anger in me, he recorded me. Did not know he was recording me, and he called the police. And so I didn't leave, because I'm like, okay, well, if you're going to call the police, then I'm going to tell them like what happened. And so when he called the police, or the anger that happened, was I was throwing things. I was throwing things, but it was in his house. So I was throwing things because now I'm at a rage, because I'm like, who are you? Like who is this person? And this person cannot love me when they are trying to find everything to throw at me, all because they've made this assumption that I've cheated on them. So he called the police. He showed the police the video, and they arrested me. They
Are you
arrested
throwing
me.
things? are you throwing things at him, or you just kind of like, picking up a plate and just throwing it down, smashing it or something?
Yeah, I was smashing it, but it was his property.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was his
I
property.
just want to make that distinction, because sometimes people will ask like, okay, well, I understand that there's still a crime if it's smashing up other people's property. Outside of that, you weren't throwing it at him. It wasn't like you threw a plate at him, a glass at him, a vase at him, anything like that. But you were doing some destruction of property. I just want to make that distinction. I just want to say that. I'm just going to leave it at that. So go ahead.
Yes. And so I was destroying his property. And so he went to the closet and he tripped or something, some kind of way. He tripped while he was running to the bathroom. He ran to the bathroom, locked it, and called the police, and pretty much told them that he has I was going in rage. I'm like trying to call me crazy, made up this whole false narrative about me. And I didn't know what he was saying on the phone, but I'm like, I know, in my mind, I'm like, I'm just going to tell them what happened. I know that, yes, I did go into a rage after he did all this stuff, but this is the reason why these things are broken. And so, it went completely different than what I thought it was. He continued to tell the lies that he was telling. And because he had footage of me when I was throwing his things, they still took everything that he said. And again, he's also in leadership, so he knows how to, talk. He knows how to persuade. And again, I just didn't even know that this was a side of him that I was really turning a deaf ear to, because all those signs were showing and I was ignoring it until that happened. And so that's what led me in jail for 2 days. And of course, he bailed me out, but then he was also trying to, even with bailing me out, he was trying to say, see, I'm the only one that's bailing you out, your family. I reached out to your family and asked them for help, and they didn't even want to help. So now he was planting these seeds in me that I started believing. But, come to find out, he did reach out to them, but he told them a whole different narrative, really, really dragging my character. But again, when you are surrounded around people that know your character and they know who you are, then they know that no one can come in and just make up stuff and they not know, no, there's more to this. And so I was grateful and still grateful to have a village where they were able to vouch for my character. They were able to defend my character, because he was really trying to, for whatever reason, he was really trying to just destroy my character, tried to take me to court and everything. So that was a different side of abuse that I never thought I would be in, because now I'm like, okay, I'm fully aware of someone that is physically abusive. I'm fully aware of someone that is verbally abusive, but he did not show those signs at first. And, little did I know, of course, later on down the line, he got caught up in all this other stuff that just really came to surface. And that was just a pattern of the things that he does. But, I'm just grateful that even happened for me or to me, because it's something that I now know that happened for me, because it caused me to really, really discern, the toxicity up front and not ignore the signs. It allowed me to work on my self-worth, my self-esteem, because I realized my self-esteem cannot be that high when there's something in me or there's some brokenness in me that's attracting that. So, yeah.
This is the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, sponsored by Anchor, produced by Penton Pending Consulting Solutions, LLC. If you are triggered at any point during this podcast, I want you to call 911. The paramedic brother's not going to show up. KeKe's not going to show up. We need you to call 911 for an immediate emergency need. If you don't have an immediate emergency need, call the domestic violence hotline that we provide in the show notes. Call the sexual assault hotline and website that we have in the show notes. If you have substance abuse issues, whether it be related to, and specifically if they are related to DV or SV, we provide those informations, AA, NA, and Al-Anon. If you are suicidal, know someone who's suicidal or witnessing a suicidal ideation take place, call 988. That's the new 911 number for suicide issues. We're speaking with KeKe Boyd, multi-abuse champion, psychology student, and she just is a mama bear extraordinaire, has overcome a lot of different things in her life, and we're talking about those things. I want to jump down to, before we get to the shameless plug section, as I call it, where I'm just going to give you the mic so you can tell people how they can get in touch with you, where they can listen to you talk on like Clubhouse, because you run 2 rooms, or you co-mod 2 rooms on Clubhouse. I want to talk about you becoming this champion, because at some point you said, nope, time out, stop, this shit is over with. I ain't going to be victimized by nobody else no more, no way, no how, no day, not today, no more. Talk about therapy, shadow work, inner child work, all of those things. The mic is yours.
Thank you, LP. And this is what I forgot to also say. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Such a privilege and honor. But I'm really, really grateful because, again, I did not realize that even calling myself a champion, sharing my journey, my domestic violence and sexual abuse journey was going to be something that would be a part of conversations, and how Mary Kim, I call her my sister and my friend, how we also show up for others. We call ourselves multi-abuse champions, and it's one of those things where I really prayed about it, and it happened in the most unconventional way. I was leaving from an organization that I had been at for 12 plus years, and I was ready to grow. I was ready to evolve, and I was ready to connect myself with people that would help me get there while I help them get where they are going. And so I just knew that I felt undervalued. I felt overlooked. And that feeling is now I know is a tug of saying, hey, where one door closes and no longer serves you, another one will open. And so little did I know Clubhouse was going to be a part of that avenue that gave me these divine connections. And so with with that answer prayer, got on Clubhouse, was not speaking for a while, just, was listening in to others. And that's when I overheard Mary Kim and shared my journey in that same room as well. And listening to Mary Kim, I'm like, we almost have just similar background. So started following her around and listening in on her, because I love when people are authentic. I love when people are consistent and resilient and have a heart to grow, a heart to serve others, a heart to advocate for those that cannot. Those things, you are speaking my love language. I love kind people, genuine people, loving people, giving people. And I love people that show that in a consistent way, where even days that you're not having the best day, you're even honest about that. And so that's what I saw in Mary Kim. And so I continued to, like I said, follow her around. And then I went back and I prayed about it. And I'm like, Lord, I want to impact. I want to be an impact. I want to serve others in the way that you see fit. But that's all I can do at this point. Give me some direction, and I'll just move when you say move, just like that. Okay. So the Holy Spirit told me Mary Kim. And I was like, wait, hold on. Like, Mary Kim does not know me from Adam. Who am I to, just approach her on terms of partnership, let alone us coming together and facilitating a room together? At this time, I didn't even know what it was going to be about. I didn't even know that it was going to be about me sharing my journey, but we sat on the phone one day for hours. And I, asked her, could she go into partnership with me? And she was almost in tears, because she said that was her prayer. I'm grateful, because after doing the inner child work, the shadow work, and it's something that I may have a little bias about, but I know that from personal experience, it works, because it also just created this avenue where I'm able to share with others from a personal experience, instead of coming from, a therapy side approach. Is I'm saying that these things have worked for me. And I'm grateful, again, because I'm able to speak on that, but I'm also able to be in partnership with my Clubhouse sister and friend, Mary Kim. And that's really how we even brought about our rooms on Clubhouse as well. Like I was, stating, we sat for hours and we strategized, we prayed, we, talked about what will be the direction for these rooms. And one of those rooms came about was for our differently able community, and also for caretakers, parents, because we're parents as well. And my Clubhouse sister, Mary Kim, she's a caretaker, and she's a mother of a son that has Down syndrome. And I also have a differently able brother that is on the autism spectrum, but also have been diagnosed with multiple diagnoses. So, we have a room with that, but then we also call ourselves champions, and that is up under resiliency and recovery. And we talked about that because it was the work that we've both done, to the point where we're like, hey, we're not giving you any advice as far as in your wellness, but these are some things that have worked for us, and these are some things that we hope that can benefit you. But this is not your therapy outlet. So we do make those that come into our spaces, and we make it known that, hey, we want this to be a part of one of those healthy outlets that will be a part of your healing journey. But we also implore you to go seek professional help and pursue the help that better suits you. So we are very articulate with saying that this is something that we want you to come in, we want you to grow, heal and grow. But also, if it goes beyond certain things that is not helping you in this space, then please seek that professional help. So it's really just a community of people that wants to grow without any judgment, sharing their traumatic past, or even sharing their journey of resiliency and recovery.
What did you do specifically outside of that for your own therapy? Did you do cognitive behavior or EMDR? Or, what therapy, if any, did you do for yourself?
So I did the CBD. I did the CBT therapy. I did the NFT therapy as well, and I also did psychotherapy. So those things work a lot with your brain, with your mind, and just really getting back to a self-regulated and actualized state where you're training your mind to heal, you're training your mind to think positive, you are training your mind to transform, and you have someone really just walking you through that, where they're solution focused. They focus on the issues, they focus on the root causes of what has caused these issues, whether it's coming from abandonment, whether you are frighting or freezing because of things from your past. And they also really focus in on your attachment styles and how to better heal and stay healthy in that regard. And so that's something that I even still put into practice today, and I still live out today. So I'm always doing mirror work. That's something that I often do, is I make sure that I'm looking myself right in the eyes, and I'm speaking life, and I'm speaking affirmations over myself in the mornings, or when I go to the restroom. And so I'm taking time to do that. I meditate, I pray, I talk to God often. I love nature. I love seeing the beautiful scenery that we can just see with just going outside and taking a walk. I love music. I love to dance. All those things are healing well springs for me. I love to sing. So those things I constantly do because it's something that I know from a personal experience to be effective.
Cognitive behavior therapy, psychotherapy, and neuro linguistic programming (NLP).
NLP.
Which one of those three modalities work best for you out of the three? I know you use a combination of them, but which one is like your favorite?
Ooh, that's a hard one because I would definitely have a top three every time instead of one. But I think that they all work together. But I love the CBT training or the CBT therapy, because again, it's really not putting the soul control and power on the therapist helping you heal, even though they are walking through those action steps to get you to a place of healing. But they're really listening to certain things that they know that they have to focus on to really help you to come up with your own path, your own healing journey, your own solution based approaches, to continue throughout your healing journey. So I love that. I really do love that, because it showed me that there's so much power in seeking professional help, but there's also so much power in saying things out loud, writing your concerns down, or writing certain negative thoughts that are going in your mind and taking it captive, and really making sure that you're being intentional about whatever those negative thoughts are, that you're replacing it with something that will speak to your neurotransmitters to say that, okay, no, I know that this negative thing just happened, but something positive is going on. So it's going to overshadow whatever those negative thoughts are, as long as you continue to keep using that muscle to think on positive things, to think on things above, to think on your mission, your goal. And so it's not saying that you're no longer going to be triggered, or obstacles are still not going to come, or those negative thoughts are not going to still happen. But it's saying that, hey, as soon as it happened, I can jump right ahead of it and really remove the negativity and speak and think, in better ways that will cast out those negative thoughts and negative emotions.
We're about to jump into our final segment for you, which is our shameless plug segment. But before we do that, you told me a great quote. You said, "Let this be your and not your only." Let this be your and not your only. What does that mean?
That means that there are so many gifts. There are so many ways that we are called, that we are set apart, that we face trials, that we face our triumphs. So it shows that even when trials come, it's one of those things that I'm so grateful to say that things don't happen just to you. It happens for you. So you can say that, like, I went through a DV situation, and though I'm a multi-abuse champion because of it. And so you don't want to place a period where there needs to be a comma, right? This is something that's continuing your journey. This is something that continues your story, and this is how you tell your story, because you're able to say, I went through this, and not only did I go through this, I'm also a champion because of that. And so nothing is never a period for me until God calls me home, because I believe that even the bad things that happen, I love the scripture, Romans 8:28, where it says that all things work together for those that are called according to a purpose, those of us that love God. And so if we truly believe that aspect of it, even if you're not a believer, because I speak to many people, and even many people come in our rooms that are of all walks of life.
Yes.
But what I'm grateful for is what we can collectively agree on is that things happen for you and not to you. And you got to let things be your and not your only. So that, that's where that stemmed from, because I'm oftentimes like, okay, now I understand that sometimes we have to go through certain trials and obstacles to be stronger, to come out even braver and more courageous than we did before. And now I'm not even asking myself, why me? I'm asking myself, why not me? And with asking myself, why not me? And I'm grateful because it is me. And I'm grateful that I get to do this. I'm grateful that I get to sit here and talk to my journey with you and so many others. I get to do this because I allowed my journey to be my and not my only.
KeKe, I am just blown away by that quote. And that's one of the best. I love quotes, and I love the
Yeah.
stories and the meanings behind quotes. So I'm going to add that to my quote board.
Yes.
I think I'm going to write a book just about my favorite quotes that I've heard and I've memorized and I've written down over my 51 years of being on this side of the dirt. Because I'm
I
like
love
you.
it.
When you're talking about periods, I feel like this. Every day that I wake up on this side of the dirt means that I'm still destined to do stuff. Like the day that I don't wake up on this side of the dirt, I'm done.
Right.
Everything that I was supposed to do is done. I don't have nothing to worry about. I ain't got no bills, none of this stuff. I ain't got nothing else to worry about, no stress, no traumas, and all this stuff. I hope and pray that the people that when it's my time that I left behind have wonderful memories and experiences. And anything that I've done wrong or mistakes that I've made amends for them. And so I know for me, I'm that same person. I'm not going to let my and be my own. I'm not going
Yeah.
to let these things hold me back because we all experience traumas, some more than others, some different than others. However, don't let your and be your own. That's a great,
Mm.
great quote. I want to, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, but I want to give you the floor again because I want to pull up on the screen for those that are not watching. So I'm telling y'all got to watch some of these podcasts. Don't just listen to them because whenever I can get the guests on camera, I get them on camera. And sometimes y'all miss just that visual interaction because I pull stuff up on the screen too. So one of the things I want to pull up is I want to pull up your IG page where you're talking about one of the rooms you do. You do the trauma, abuse, grief, resiliency, and recovery room from the Mentors in Motion uh, Club in Clubhouse. And that's
Yeah.
your days.
The Mentors in Motion one is on Wednesdays, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central.
Okay. And then then you have another room, which is from the Real Moms Club, all caretakers differently able. What day is that one?
Those rooms are on Mondays, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central.
Okay. So Mondays, the all caretakers differently able, and Wednesdays, the mentors in motion, trauma, abuse, grief, resiliency, and recovery. I want to put those links in the show notes so people can get in touch with you. Is there any other way that people can get in touch with you that you like to put out there? Because we'll list any and all links that you want.
Yeah, I think that Instagram is my playground. So Instagram, Clubhouse are the two avenues that I'm mainly on. Now on Clubhouse, I'm only on there on Mondays and Wednesdays
Okay.
because I want to have balance with my home work life. So I'm on Clubhouse, Instagram. Again, that's where I am the most. Facebook, I'm on Facebook as well, and YouTube. Don't have a lot uploaded there yet, but I am mostly on Instagram. So Instagram, Clubhouse, Facebook.
Cool. We will list your links on there. I want to thank you so much. I got one more question before we
Sure.
go.
Sure.
If you could write a letter or an email to your younger self, so whatever age that is, what would you say?
Oh, good question. Wow. KeKe, you are beautiful from the inside out. You are destined for greatness. Surround yourself around healthy people. Surround yourself around like minded people. But whatever you think, you are. So yes, I'm talking to you. Do not give up. Do not lose hope. Listen, life may throw in some setbacks, but understand that it is a setup for your next. It is a setup for your and. It is the setup for what is yet to come. Believe that, because when you believe it, you can achieve it.
KeKe Boyd, couldn't say it any better. I want to thank you so much for being on the Trigger Want to Talk podcast. I will see you in these clubhouse streets Mondays and Wednesdays with our beloved sister, Miss Mary Kim Farkas. We
Yeah,
absolutely love
love you,
her.
girl.
That's my club quarantine sister because we love our brother D Nice, and we'll be on there
Be
sometime at the
nice.
same time, sending messages back and forth and doing some virtual dancing. And I'm telling you, I don't know if you listen or watch D Nice on IG when he does his club quarantine sessions, but it's just amazing, and it helped me get through the earlier stages of the pandemic because I was back in my hometown in St. Louis. I'm working at the fire department. I'm working at the EMS service. Mrs. LP was here in Charlotte, where we are now, because of her medical issues and stuff or whatever. And that's what helped me in those times where nobody was around, because it was just me and the dog for about a month. And then we got an apartment here, and I sent her, because we have a girl pit bull, I sent her and our belongings. My brother picked them up and brought them here to Charlotte. So when I wasn't at work, or even when I was at work, I'm listening to D Nice. That was helping me get through all of this stuff in the earlier stages of the pandemic. So definitely, I want to give a shout out to you. I want to give a shout out to Mary Kim for having the strength, the courage, and the wisdom to have both of these rooms, to talk about these things, to have not only dialogue, but solution-based action plans on how to overcome and be champions in these specific traumas that we're talking about and that we cover today. You are such a blessing to so many people, and I just want to thank you and give you your flowers for being that mama bear all across the board, you know. And again, I got to have you come back at a later time. Like, I'm going to have Mary Kim come back at a later time. I want to discuss the next time I have you on DV and SV with differently able individuals, because these traumas happen to everybody, especially those that unfortunately are differently able. And there's some specific things that I want you to talk about with that community and how those trauma affect them, and some of the resources that are available for those individuals. So I'm going to mark it in my book. We'll talk about it at a later time. We'll do some planning and have another pre-interview meeting about that. Maybe in a couple of months, we'll revisit that on the Trigger Warning Talk podcast. What do you think about that?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Let's change the world.
Let's change the world. KeKe Boyd, folks, definitely tap into her. She's just a beautiful person inside and out. And don't even think about saying nothing about them damn Dallas Cowboys. I'm telling you, don't do it, KeKe. I don't.
How about them? How about them?
No, we don't talk about.
How about them?
Because
the world's greatest team.
No,
How about them?
No. I saw this meme earlier. Look, no, I'm not gonna even do it. No, I'm not gonna even do it.
Don't do it. Don't take this moment to tear me down. Don't take this
One of my brother-in-laws, he is the only, I got 4 brother-in-laws. He is the only Dallas Cowboy fan in the family. And
that means he's set apart. He is set apart.
He is diehard, and I'm telling you, he holds his own. But man, he gets it from all of us, boy. Woo! I love you, my brother Tim. I love you, but them damn Dallas Cowboys. It's the fans. It ain't the team. It's y'all fans. That's what we have a problem with.
That we're diehard fans, that we're committed, we're dedicated.
Look, KeKe, we just gonna end it right here, and we just gonna leave it at that on a good note. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I love you. There ain't nothing you can do about it.
There's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it.
That's all I'm saying. KeKe Boyd, folks. Now, I'm gonna do this missing person story. If you want to stay on, that's fine. If not, you can go ahead and just leave the studio. But that's cool. This is very different. Now, sometimes when we do missing person cases, the person is not missing. They die under mysterious circumstances, or it was an obvious death. Their killer or killers have not been brought to justice. And that's what I'm going to cover today. So if you give me a few minutes, I'll cover it real quick, because I just found the actual news story, and it's like 3 minutes long or whatever. I want to bring it on the screen right now. And we're going to talk about this young man, ALONZO Brooks. So let me pull up the story real quick here. And I want you guys to listen to this story because it's quite fascinating.
About yesterday. After 17 years, the FBI is now ruling a Topeka man's death a murder. In 2004, ALONZO Brooks' family found his body in a creek in Lucene, Kansas. The coroner at the time ruled his cause of death as unknown.
But just last year, the FBI exhumed Brooks's body from its Topeka grave for further examination. And now they are confirming what the family knew for years. KSNT News reporter Dan Garrett is live after speaking to Brooks' aunt about this new development. Dan?
Brooke Molly, the original autopsy was done here by the Shawnee County coroner. In 2004, they could not determine a cause of death. Today, Brooks's aunt says she knew 17 years ago that he was killed, and now she finally has the evidence to support it. ALONZO Brooks's family feels like they're one step closer to finding out what happened to their charismatic 23-year-old. In 2004, Brooks had gone to a party in the small town of Lacine, Kansas, and never returned. Almost a month after his disappearance, Brooks' family found his body in a creek, not far from the house where the party was held. Back then, Shawnee County Coroner Eric Mitchell reported after his investigation that he didn't know how Brooks died, ruling his cause of death unknown.
And we knew in our heart it wasn't. We knew it was murder.
Just last year in 2020, the FBI exhumed Brooks' body from a Topeka cemetery for further investigation. Just this week, the results were announced, confirming Brooks was killed. This was no accident.
We were more glad and finally, reassured that this is exactly what we thought.
I reached out to Othram, a company that specializes in forensic evidence, to see how medical examiner experts would be able to determine how a person died 16 years later. The director for case management, Michael Vogan, couldn't speak to this case, but says technology has advanced a lot the past couple of decades, allowing for more information to come from DNA.
If any of those items have been analyzed for DNA and there's a profile present that's not the victim's, so in other words, it's an unknown human DNA profile, they could potentially do the type of testing we do at Othram to figure out who that DNA belongs to.
While the family has renewed hope justice will be served and they'll finally know what happened all those years ago, Brooks' aunt Angela Cox says she wished the original autopsy came to this conclusion.
We wish that, it would have been a different outcome from the beginning. What we thought it was, we knew from the beginning that it wasn't an accident.
Cox and her family are asking anyone that might know information to please come forward. Even if it seems insignificant, it could help with the investigation. Live in downtown Topeka, covering local news that matters, Dan Garrett, KSNT News.
Yeah, Dan, they have waited a very, very long time for answers, and hopefully we are closer to getting to the bottom of all this.
So I want to thank you so much for staying on with us, KeKe. When we have these cases that we cover, I always tell people that we care about people all across the board. 99% of the cases that we do are melanated folks. That's intentional. And I'll tell you why unapologetically. It's because we want to bring the same media attention and energy to those melanated men, women, and children like our non-melanated men, women, and children. It could be a kidnapping, abduction, runaway, and in this case, a person who died under mysterious circumstances and their killer or killers has not been arrested, brought to justice, adjudicated, any of those things. We did a case similar to this when I interviewed Theta Person about her son, Christian Ferguson, a differently able kid who was never found. Nobody has ever found his body. His dad, DeJuan Ferguson, was brought to trial at the end of the end of June this year. It was on Court TV. That case is Missouri versus Ferguson. If you don't know about that case or hadn't heard about Christian Ferguson, go to courttv.com and look it up. I interviewed his mom, Theta Person, who created a nonprofit called Looking for a Child. And we talked about not only that case, I covered a local case because we're all from St. Louis. So it was a St. Louis-based episode of a young man named Donye Jones. Donye Jones, for those that may have heard of him, he was a Ferguson activist during the post-Mike Brown situation in Ferguson, Missouri. He was found hanging in his backyard Nobody knows who killed them. Nobody knows who did it. Nobody's come forth. And so we want to bring justice for Danya Jones. So we'll cover those cases. And I want to make it known right here, right now on this podcast. Again, unapologetic, because again, we want to bring the same media attention and media coverage for melanated folks that we don't get in the media. It's starting to get better, but it's the tip of the iceberg compared to our non-melanated men, women, and children when it comes to missing persons cases. So with that being said, again, this is the Trigger Warning Talk podcast, sponsored by Anchor, produced by Pen Consulting Solutions, LLC. Until next time, folks, as I always say, live in awareness, don't live in fear. Make sure you keep your situational awareness on point. Ladies, gentlemen, kids, boys, girls, whoever you are, if you want to be part of the solution and not the problem. I'm LP for KeKe Boyd, LP out.